If you would please, just picture your own club right now. Picture the best meeting you've ever had and think about what that means to you, that special place. Perhaps it's one of those places that you rush to get there as quickly as you can because you want to be a part of it, but yet it's hard to pull yourself away because you don't want to leave. I hope that your club is that. And as Vice President Education, whether you are currently or have been, boy, I'll tell you, we can certainly drive that environment that I think you just pictured. And it's my intent today to help alleviate and even possibly ameliorate some issues that can come up as Vice President Education, Base Camp Manager, with some tools on how to do this. Today's training is part of the makeup training. However, this is an elective. There is no credit available for this, except you have my uh, credit in terms of thinking you guys are great for being here. But as far as DCP, that will not count. But it is part of the District 7 Club Officer Makeup Training Series, which takes place between June and August. This is, of course, the elective. You're going to be learning about VPE, Pathways, Base Camp Manager, FreeToastHost training. The specific title of this is VPE Base Camp Manager Contribute with Confidence. Who specifically is this elective training for? It is for newer Vice President Education club officers, as well as experienced ones that would like a refresher or new information on the Base Camp Manager role and FreeToastHost training to integrate with that. The aspects we'll cover, first of all, we'll learn techniques and strategy to further manage club education using and integrating Basecamp and FreeToastHost tools. But now that, so we're not just throwing these terms around, what do we mean by manage in this case? What I do mean in this is submitting awards, tracking progress, and helping your members with pathways. Some of these tools we can get into right away, and I do differentiate in this presentation between basic level and then we're going to get into more advanced level. It's my opinion that there are certain aspects we're going to get into. It would be great, for example, to verify certain educational achievements, but that's a lot to ask for a newer VPE. So we're going to kind of come at it from that framework, that there's a basic level that you can actually do a lot, really can do a lot. So the first thing we need to do, again, I don't want to leave anybody behind, so this might be review, but let's just drill our basics here. First of all, we need to log in as Basecamp Manager. So we go to toastmasters.org. We log in as the arrows indicate. Once we do that, we type in our member ID or email, type in the password, and click log in. Very important. Of course, we're going to be dealing with pathways in this case. So what do we click on? We click on pathways, as indicated. But just when you think you've said enough about pathways, we realize, oh, we're specifically going to Basecamp. So we click on go to Basecamp. Just when you think you've seen the word Basecamp enough, there's another time you have to be looking at it and pressing the button, which is at the bottom. It says log in as Basecamp Manager, because you can also log in as a member. This might be a review, but I don't want to assume this. So in this case, we're going to log in as Basecamp Manager. Continuing on with this, what is probably the first thing we need to learn about? Again, this could be review, and please share this information with others that might be struggling. This will be posted on YouTube, and it is my intent to put timestamps so that if someone wants to know about pending requests, you can go right to that second and point them to it. With just a few minutes of their time, they can learn about a particular topic. The first one that not a lot of people know about, actually, is external training. And all that means is that your member or you has given a presentation outside of your club. And it just gives a little bit of tracking ability to do this as external training in Basecamp. So again, we mentioned we need to be logged in as a Basecamp manager to do this. Once we do this, this is the screen that we will see. This is technically the Basecamp manager home screen. You see these three buttons. Pending requests is the one we're going to address. And just as a parenthetical, I'm not going to be pointing you toward the member progress. That is very specialized. It's very technical, and I certainly would not suggest that a newer member get into that button. And even the manager tutorials, I have found that they are a little bit complex. They're hard to get back from unless you know some basics of navigating within the Basecamp setup as a Basecamp manager. So the only thing that I would click on as a beginner is actually pending requests to get started. This is what it looks like. Once you do that, you'll see view pending requests. This happens to be an external training that I did. I was giving the club secretary training on June 5th of this year. So that's the way I listed it. As you can see, there are two types that we need to be aware of when it comes to external training. This was the initial request of which the VPE can either approve or deny, or I should say the Basecamp manager, whether VPE or technically president or secretary. You may not know that. Let's make sure that we're clear. A Basecamp manager for all clubs will be in the role of either vice president education, who's sort of the main manager of this, as well as the president and secretary. So this was my initial training. In other words, is this a valid thing that we can give you credit for, within Toastmasters? And then we can look a little further. So we click on what the event was, D7TLI Club Secretary, and this is what it shows. It gives a little bit more in detail. It talks about the date, the description, the path. I was doing this on my strategic relationships, the project, the location. In this case, I just said it was in a club other than my home club. That was one of the options, and it was in English. Now, once that is approved, you are given the option to offer any comments. And I like to put something in there for the individual. I'm approving your initial request from the external training. The description, I look forward to hearing back after your presentation, because you're not done yet if you want credit, to approve the final completion in Basecamp. Keep up the great work. And then once you've done that, you'll see there are no other requests in there at this time. But of course, they're very diligent. And then they did the presentation. And now they're saying, okay, well, thank you for approving me. I've done it. And now I need credit for it in Basecamp. So this is the type, as you can see, it's circled, is called completion. And we're given the same options of approve or deny. The green check mark is the approve. The red check mark is the deny. And then, of course, I like to give a little supportive comment. I'm approving your completion request for giving that particular presentation. Congratulations. Now, the one that does confuse a lot of people, boy, I've seen a lot of confusion with this, is level completion. We're going to talk a little bit more about this. Within Basecamp, which is what we're talking about right now, this is how it comes in. It's actually only one that will come in. In other words, we have the option. You can see my name on the far left, the description of my level 4 completion, and then the approve or deny. And then it will basically follow the same sequences we talked about for the external training. In this case, it's only one procedure, but the next thing we need to know about is, okay, we're talking about these pending requests. Well, how do you know when these come up? Well, there are these things called pending request notifications. The club email contact person in Club Central will receive the pending requests. So if you want to be the one receiving those pending requests, you want to be sure that you are listed as the club contact. There are other ways that you can have this sent to multiple people, basically through a forwarding type email. We're not going to get into that particular aspect within the presentation. However, if it comes up in the Q&A, I suspect some here will already know about this, and we can discuss that if it's interesting. But yes, please be sure that if you want to be receiving the Basecamp pending requests, you must be the person listed for email contact in Club Central. Speaking of Club Central, I have definitely had the situation where we have members in a given club that are just going crazy and wonderfully with Pathways presentations. And I say to myself, oh my God, I can't wait to look at their distinguished club program information to see how many goals have been met with their education within the distinguished club program. And then it says 0. It's like, what? Well, I know for a fact that they have already given at least 10 presentations so far at a given time throughout the year. What's going on? And I'll tell you exactly what has happened. This happens over and over and over again. So I really want to drive this point home that level awards must be processed. Certainly in Basecamp, as we talked about, that first thing where we responded to the pending request. But if you want to get DCP credit with Toastmasters International, it must be submitted in Club Central. The way that we do this, we log into the Toastmasters International website, right? So we're not just throwing around these terms, Club Central. What's a Club Central? We're going to show you exactly what we're talking about. And that's something we're going to click on. It's called Club Central. It's the central point for a lot of your club business within the Toastmasters International website. And then we're going to click on a button, Submit Education Awards. So here we are, logging in again. Same way we did in the beginning, member ID, password, login button. There are different ways you can get to Club Central. I like to have one way and teach that, which can have multiple applications. So I like to get people involved with Leadership Central. This is the way I'm going to show you. You probably have other ways that you may like to do it as well. If you go my way, you'll click on Leadership Central. And then over to the far left, you can click on Club Central. And there it is. Once you're in Club Central, you'll see several different options, but at the top of this screen, you'll see within the category of club membership, you can click on Submit Education Awards. And please understand, unless this is done, your club, the member, will not get credit within the DCP award system through Toastmasters International. Once we click on that, we would select the member. Now, I did scrub people's information here, but I hope you still get the idea because this is being recorded for posterity. So you would select the member. Once you've done that, it gives you the option to select the education program. Now you've got the member, the program in front of you. You want to make sure that you're correct in the way that you've been doing it. So you click on Review Award Submission. And if it all looks good, you can click on Submit Award, or if you notice something does not quite look right, you can click on Edit. But in this case, we're going to click on Submit Award, which completes that aspect. Now, there's another thing that you want to be aware of. The Pathways Mentor Program. This is something that is available through Basecamp. It's an extensive program. I've been through it. It's excellent. And in the end, it's very similar to doing this with a level completion. So we need to first approve the the Pathways Mentor program completion, and then we need to submit the award in Club Central. Now, I'm going to give a parenthetical because I'm really drawing a line between the basic level VPE, Basecamp Manager, and the advanced, but I'm just going to pop this in case it's interesting. The requirements of the Pathways Mentor program are pretty explicit. They're pretty straightforward in Basecamp. You really don't see access to the next project until you've completed one thing after another after another. Technically, I found this out through talking with Toastmasters International that you're actually technically not supposed to submit your award until you actually have the requirements for a Pathways Mentor designation, which would include having completed at least one path, in which case in Basecamp, you can complete the program but not have completed a path. So you need to have a level completed. Of course, you do need to have completed the program in Basecamp and have been a member in good standing for 6 months. This is a parenthetical. I'm just letting those of you know that are maybe more advanced, and this is something that you can ask me about in the Q&A. And again, as mentioned, it's very similar to a level approval in Basecamp and award submission in Club Central. The other thing that I have talked with people about, I remember just a real sweetheart of a person that was so struggling. They just wanted to see who's in my club and what education award status are they at. I think the simplest way to get into this is to click on what's called the club roster within Club Central. We're going to show you what this is. And I really hope that if anybody here has struggled with it, that I can offer a little support, because I know she was very, upset about this. She really wanted to do it and was trying to get into all the reports within her Basecamp account, and it was just absolute misery. But this is a much simpler way to go about it, in my opinion. So this shows your club's member list, and it does display all of their current educational award status. So here we are back at Club Central. We've already talked about how to get into there. And then instead of clicking on Submit Education Awards to the left, you'll click on just a little bit to the right, Club Roster. You'll notice this is in the top section under Club Membership. And I don't mind my information being up there, so I just wanted you to see in the top left, it's got my name, Dave Bones. I happen to have a DTM award status, so that's listed. And it also tells that I'm an officer, so Vice President Education. It says that I'm Pathways enrolled, what I'm paid up through, and it's got some other information. But if you're like this person, you really just want the person's name and their award status, and this can help you with that. Okay, we're now going to take that leap into what I'm calling the advanced level. And we're going to now get into part of the description of what was offered in the advertisement for this particular webinar, which is at the advanced level, we're going to go through, I guess, a case study and show you how we're going to be integrating FreeToastHost and some other things. So we just got a Basecamp pending request. It was a level completion approval. But now, being that person that just wants to get into the verification and specific member tracking, we don't want to just click the green check button per se. We want to be supporting our members, of course, and doing that when it's appropriate. But I have found as a VPE that 25 to 50% of the time, people make mistakes about when they think they've completed things. So it can really help them, and it's just a good thing to get into all the way around. But I just want to be clear, if you're a new VPE, this is Dave Bones speaking. This is not Toastmasters International. I don't think it's fair to say you are the club VPE, but you haven't had training in this stuff, and you have to figure out FreeToastHost, and you have to figure out this before you can even do your job to submit awards. I don't think that's fair. So me personally, you know what? Click the green check button if you have to, or ask questions. But now if you're at that advanced level, you want to know more, this is where we are. I do realize this is probably controversial, and I'm not meaning to be, but I'm trying to offer support for vice president education, base camp managers of all levels, to where they can do this with confidence and know they're helping their club. So again, we're going to log in as base camp manager, and we're going to get into something called the member search. This is how we find that specific member and their specific progress within a given level that they want us to approve. We're going to use something called paths in learning. It should be very familiar if you're familiar with Basecamp as a member. The logic carries through. That's why I love this method. So here we are again. We're logging in as Basecamp manager, clicking on pending request as we described. We can see Dave Bones is back again. He really wants that level 4 completion. So here we are again. We're looking at it, but we want to make sure Dave has done his work to help him and really just make sure that it's all going smoothly. So what we do once you are in that screen at the top right of your Basecamp Manager home screen, you'll see a search button, and that's what that is pointing to. Now, maybe you're like, you probably know his name, and you could start typing that person's name, but maybe you're like, you know what, I kind of want to know who else is in my club that's listed, in case I want to just kind of figure out where they're at. So you just start to type in the word club. When you type in the word club, you'll see this is going to bring you to all of your members. It's the club Basecamp Manager. We're going to show you how to look at all of your members in here. This is where the magic happens. You, at that point, once it's called up, you would click on View Team. The team is, in fact, your club membership. So there I am. I've scrubbed the other people. Other than that, you would be seeing all their names. But there I am at the top, Dave Bones. So I would simply select Dave Bones. As mentioned, very, very important, we need to select paths and learning. What I love about this for newer VPEs is they're probably not new to pathways. They're just new as a Vice President Education Basecamp Manager. But they've already done things like click on paths and learning so they can access their own curriculum. So this is hopefully going to be sort of old hat, shall we say. So click on paths and learning. Same thing that you would do as a member. You click on open curriculum. The only difference is instead of your curriculum, you'll be opening Dave's curriculum in this case, because you can see in the top left, my name is listed, Dave Bones, paths and learning. I click on open curriculum to look at the members' curriculum within the path strategic relationships in this case. Now we're looking at the big picture. On the left, you'll see the entire curriculum. My level 1, 2, and 3 are all completed. That's why they have check marks next to them. But because I am actually requesting a level 4 completion, there is no check mark there. That's sort of your big picture off to the left. Now, we have a question about level 4. As a matter of fact, you can see to the right side, the 100% mark is right next to level 1, level 2, level 3. Not so sure about the 67%, how useful that particular number is, but at least we can see that it's not 100%. So we click on View Details. What's going on with this? Okay, now you notice we have the big picture still on the left. A few things to just bring to your attention. Noting that it does say level 4 that we're looking at the top. The metrics that we can try to look for on the far right are total items are 3. The minimum required to complete level 4 are 3. And then what it says there is completed 2. So now we need to dissect this a little further. The project Public Relations Strategies was my required project in level 4, and their check mark is there. So that tells us, okay, that's complete. And then it turns out that the electives completed 100%, And that is done as well. So what's up with the 67%? At this point, that bottom circle, that bigger circle, you might notice pending completion approval. So that really, the holdup at this point is me. And we want it that way, right? We want to verify. That's what we're doing right now. So this tells me that, okay, these are what are required for me to give a level 4 completion. So this is, again, what tells me the criteria to offer this level completion. I'm satisfied with this, but now we still want to go a little further if we can. This is where FreeToastHost comes in handy. FreeToastHost, what is it? What is FreeToastHost? I posted on a Facebook group and they said, what is a free toast host? And I thought, well, that's a great question. They're a company that provides complimentary hosting and websites for Toastmasters clubs around the world. Specifically in our case, if you have a club website that is under Free Toast Host, that's why it matters. In the case of this presentation, if you signed up for this, I suspect you probably do have a Free Toast Host club website or have had that at one time. We need to log in, of course. I'm just going to start from the basics. I don't want to leave anybody behind here. We're going to be accessing meeting agendas. And the thing that we want to know if we're logging in as a member, and we are the Vice President Education, is the default setting is that you will have access to edit and create meeting agendas. We're going to also talk about the importance, if you really want to use this free toast host method, of what's called reconciling roles and speeches for each meeting, not only before the meeting, but afterward. Just make sure that that information is good, that you can depend on it. And then as long as we are satisfied that it is good information, we're going to base our decisions using what are called reports. The specific report, and there are pictures of all this in just a moment, so please don't feel like you have to memorize all this. I'm just giving an overview. We're going to use what's called the member speech report. And optionally, you could also look at something called the member role report. So the speeches would be the speeches the member has given. The role would be inclusive of other roles that you have done in addition to giving presentations, like the topics master, Toastmaster, speech evaluator, that sort of thing. Here we are at the Free Toast Host. Log in. So member log in. Then you start typing your name. I just typed in Dave, and it brought up the rest of that because the name or username from the pop-up list that displays means that you are included on the member roster and will be able to access the website. Once it's confirmed, we of course type in our password and then click Authenticate or Log In. Because our business now is about verification, we want to go right to where we need to be, which is meeting agendas. And we have options here. We can, on the far left, view any agenda that you like with the down arrow. If you really want to go further back, literally to the beginning of your first agenda ever, you can click on the middle one that says List All Agendas. And then finally, the edit, the pencil, is something that you will want to look at, especially to reconcile your meeting agendas after the meeting has occurred. Things to look at before you reconcile, in other words, confirm that this is correct. The two places that I would recommend being aware are the agenda items at the top. Make sure that, if a person is listed as, we'll say, a speaker on a given day, that they in fact did show up and give the speech. They didn't call last minute and then were not able to make it. So you want to make sure that that is correct, in fact. I like to keep track of attendance. That's something that you can do on that button 1 over. And then once you're satisfied that you have done the meeting, Those that attended are accounted for. Those that have done roles and speeches are accounted for. Then you would click reconciled. You would just check that off as it's indicated. And then once you save it, it will be reconciled. And you know in your listing, you'll see this reconciled uh, notification, shall we say. It's indicated as such, I'll put it that way, with, I believe, a check mark. That way you know, okay, I can depend on this. And we talked about the reports. That's what that icon is at the top there. You click on that to get to the reports. In other words, we're happy with the data, and now we want to figure out, okay, from this date to this date, what did this member give for speeches? And we want to correlate this with the information that the member has been doing for this given level completion. The way that I would recommend this right off the bat in this case, in our case study of Dave Bones wanting his strategic relationships level 4, would be to have the report type such that it says member speech report as it's indicated, and make sure the report is for my name, not the whole club. It's just information that you don't need. So then you would click on run or download, and what you'll be given is exactly this. You'll see my name there, of course, the date or dates in this case. You'll get a long list of dates or however many speeches they've given. You'll be also, the two other things of note that I would recommend looking at would be the speech title and the Pathways project information. So you can see the name, date, title, and project. At the top, it sort of indicates what this report is. It's the report date. In this case, I did it for the current Toastmasters year. And then, of course, the member as indicated. Now, the other thing that I actually do in my club, it's a lot to ask. People don't always want to do it, but I'll just share it, which is to ask members to keep track of their own speeches as well. Could you please tell me what date you gave your speech, what the title was, and the Pathways project information? It could save me a lot of time. However, I understand that that's not always possible, and I'm willing to do the extra work as Vice President Education if I have the skill set. If I'm a beginning VPE and the member doesn't keep track of all this stuff, you know what? We got to keep moving sometimes, and let's just put it on the honor system and do our best. But at this advanced level, I think it's really useful to perhaps ask them that information if they're willing to share it. If they're not, you can still verify everything in the ways that I've described so far. Once you have verified this level completion, now we go back to pending requests, and Dave Bones has been waiting so patiently for his level 4 completion. We can now click, you know it, the green check mark. We must remember this, that the level award submission also needs to be done in Club Central once verified, once we have done the approval in Basecamp. So it needs to be done in both Basecamp and in Club Central. We do this, as we have been discussing, by logging into the Toastmasters International website, going to Club Central, submit education awards. Repetition is the mother of education, which is why we're repeating this a little bit right now if it's not review for anybody. We're going through the same procedure that we did earlier. We're now getting into Club Central, submit education awards, select the member, in this case it'll be me, the education program, and we want to review it, make sure it's correct, and then we'll of course submit the award. The next section we need to be aware of, after all, we are Vice President Education Club officers, is helping members with Pathways and Basecamp. I want to tell you about a couple of references that I would recommend for you if you're a little bit more experienced, but please don't give this to your new members. When I think of a manager, I think of a big picture type role. So these two documents I'm going to share with you, and this will be included in the chat that you can download. It's complimentary. If it's interesting, you can certainly utilize these two documents. So, but the point is, it's a big picture for you as the manager, but not really to share with the member per se, unless a specialized situation occurs. The first one is called the Paths and Projects Catalog. It's PDF. We're going to be showing you these documents. And the second one is Visual Explanation of Pathways. It's also a PDF. So here we are at the first one, Paths and Projects. You can see that there are all 11 paths. That one at the bottom, it says link to the new path, engaging humor. That is the 11th path. It's a little bit elusive, but if you know that it's there, you can find it if you have someone that's in the engaging humor path. So you can click on any one of those if you want to know the paths and projects within. So let's say if we want to know about Dave Bone's strategic relationships path. Click on that. We're curious what's going to happen. And lo and behold, oh my goodness, the big picture is right there. All of my requirements, all of my projects, electives, required projects, it's all there. So as a Basecamp manager, this document potentially could be gold for you if you're not aware of it. So let's say if we want to know about the icebreaker. Dave just did his icebreaker. It brings you right to the project description. It's all in this PDF. It's just wonderful. And this is actually drawn from material that's actually in Basecamp, but it saves a person from having to log into Basecamp and do all this. It's sort of a one-stop shopping situation. The other one we talked about being a visual representation of pathways. Now this is just for level 1, but it's a 6-page document. And I love this. If you are a visual person, a big picture person as a education manager for your club, this tells you the whole thing. I can't tell you how many times people don't get that in level 1, there are actually 5 presentations. And it's very clear here. Your icebreaker, just 1 presentation. Evaluation and feedback involves 3 presentations. If someone's not sure, they can, you can, as a Vice President Education Basecamp Manager, can look right here. Oh, yes, my goodness. So I need to, give my speech for the first time, receive feedback. The second speech is I'm going to apply that feedback. And then finally, I give my own evaluation. So all 3 of those are required, as you probably know. And it really clarifies this level, as well as it goes all the way to DTM and pathways. I can't recommend it enough for a big picture situation. But again, please don't give this to your new members. They will rebel. They will not be happy. I have done this, and I'm sharing my experience with you. Speaking of methods for teaching maybe some of the folks that are just getting started, I have a few priorities. I'm happy to share these with you, and you may have your methods that already work. But in my opinion, clarity is extremely important. What do I mean by that? I am a big fan. I don't know if you guys have thought of this before, but there's a principle called the 80-20 principle. And in this case, it's where 20% of tasks within Pathways and Basecamp actually provide 80% of value. So I'm actually going to leave out the other 80%, especially initially working with someone new, because the main obstacles are actually overload, meaning just too much information, or they have a certain amount of information, but it's not organized. That's what I call confusion. I have heard different suggestions, like just telling someone to Google it, or, but the problem with that, and that can be very good for that self-starter, is we want to remove steps, not add steps. Because I don't know about you, but I have literally spent all night researching a given topic, and it is never just one step. It's always many, many steps. So I try to look for the things that are going to be even less required for number of steps. Another aspect is autonomy. How can we do this? Try to provide an overview. Like at the end, you'll notice that I try to do a bit of a recap. That's my attempt at an overview, and then maybe a checklist of those important items, how to do them. Now, really important, what to do with resistance when we come up against resistance. The first thing you may consider is try to have some of the benefits clear in your own mind from your own personal experience. For example, I knew nothing about visual aids before I started training people in pathways. So it was like, oh my God, I learned about visual aids. I learned how to communicate with people, all these benefits. You might have 10 just to have that clear list of benefits. If they say, well, why should I do pathways? I've talked with people before, they said, well, it just seems like a checklist. They don't see the value, but if you can live it and be inspired, maybe you can be inspiring for them or clarifying at the very least. But please, be patient with these folks because I've talked with people that it just takes time over weeks, months, even years. I still have hope on some of those folks that maybe we'll find some common ground with pathways. In practice, I think the top thing that you can possibly do if you want to help people is one-on-one tutoring. Just say, what do you want to do? Let's set up a Zoom session. Let's share your screen. Why don't you drive and I'll try and coach you the best I can. Just meet them where they're at. I found this to be incredibly beneficial. It's the highest chance of success, in my opinion. And I want to stress that you don't have to be feeling like you have all the answers. You don't need to have all the answers. Just know where to ask for help. For example, anybody that wants my help, I'm very available. I love this topic and I love helping people with it. I'm sure there are many others that you can do this with, but just try to find out who that person is to ask for help. And that could be help for you as a Vice President Education and Basecamp manager, or if you want to refer me or somebody else directly to the member, that's okay too. There's a video resource that I want to quickly tell you about. I know we're getting tight on time. I have a YouTube channel. I think I have all of 8 subscribers. So it's certainly not going to be tearing up YouTube anytime soon, but I happen to be passionate about the topic, about Toastmasters, about pathways. There is a playlist that I created. It's called Toastmasters Pathways Fundamentals. And you could be that 9th person that signs up for my channel. The first video on there is just called Toastmasters Pathways Fundamental with timestamps for topics 101 basics. The timestamps is exactly what we're going to try and do with this, which is on a given topic, you can just click on that and you're there. And within 15 seconds to a few minutes, you can actually discover that topic that you were wanting to research. The 4 aspects of this are logging to Basecamp. These are the most basic things that provide, these are the 20% of things that provide 80% of the value, in my opinion. Logging to Basecamp, completing a project, specifically your icebreaker, what to do with evaluation forms, where to find them, and then finally, how to get around Pathways Basecamp navigation. This is what it looks like on YouTube in case you want to try to find it. This is what the timestamps work, those sort of boxes around the blue numbers. You would click on those blue numbers to get to any one of those given topics. To recap, we've talked about the basic level. We talked about pending requests. We talked about awards. And of course, we need to submit those and process them in both Basecamp and in Club Central. The club roster, if you're looking for your members' education status information, that's where you find it. The advanced level would include actually verification of the awards and the ability to track members in Basecamp, Paths in Learning, as well as FreeToastHost Club website through the agendas and the reports. We talked about helping members with pathways in Basecamp, the resource for you, not for members, but the big picture PDF references for you as the manager. Gave you some ideas for the teaching method priorities of clarity through 80-20 fundamentals, autonomy through an overview and checklist, kind of like we're doing now, how to deal with resistance, maybe offer empathy rather than correcting them. That's something else that many of us want to do. Well, no, you're wrong about that. And then just kind of go into how they're wrong. Maybe try to be a listener and offer some empathy could be another way to go. I've given you my video resource, DB Toastmasters Hub YouTube channel. You could be that 9th subscriber. Here's the playlist, Toastmasters Pathways Fundamentals. Thank you for your leadership at Toastmasters and for attending. I look forward to any questions you might have. Over to PJ.
And it would help if I unmute myself. Thank you, Dave.
Thank
That
you.
was a very comprehensive presentation on pathways and FreeToastHost and Club Central and all of the above in 49 minutes. Wow. I just posted the link in the chat window where y'all can copy that link and download this presentation or the PDFs that Dave mentioned. And we did not have any questions posted in there, but Dave, you did trigger a couple of comments that I would like to make. And
Please.
I do have one question.
Yes.
So let me start with a comment. Speaking of comments, you said, or you showed on the level completion approval screen that comments box where you congratulated the person and encouraged them to keep going and that sort of thing. There's another reason for putting in a comment that I was taught initially as a what do they call us, pathways champions, or whatever, when they first introduced this. I was trained as one of the people to train clubs on how to use pathways.
Okay.
And one of the things they told us was, once you click the green arrow to approve someone, they have no idea which of the 3 base camp managers of the club did that approval.
Oh, okay.
They have no record of that, which seems like a major fault. But anyway, so they told us, always tell people when you approve a level, put your name or initials and the date in that comments field so that it is permanently recorded who approved that level.
Excellent. Thank you for that, PJ.
Okay, really, and that's something you might want to add into your presentations and teach people in the future. Put something in there to indicate who approved it, because otherwise they don't know. And if there's any question going back, they won't know who approved it.
Yes.
Okay, so that's one thing. And then the other thing you mentioned, verifying that people have actually completed the projects.
Yes.
Unfortunately, clicking into Basecamp Manager, it looks like they completed them, which of course is why you go to the FreeToastHost and compare the agendas to see if they actually gave the speeches. Now, in my club, we actually had some members early on click through a project. They just click next, next, next. You know, they read it, next, 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 and they got all the way to the end, and they clicked on the complete the level. And
I'm familiar with this.
They had not done any of the speeches, none of the projects, but now the Basecamp Manager gets a level approval request.
Oh, God, yes.
And I was the Basecamp Manager during part of this time, and I contacted them. I said, "What the heck are you doing? You didn't do any of those projects, you know, and go back and do those, then I'll be happy to approve it." Yes. But meanwhile, denied. Yep. And you know, so people were on a learning curve, and I don't think anyone did that maliciously or, you know, trying to cheat the system. But just I'm saying that because I saw it happen. I don't know if you saw it happen, but I personally witnessed that on numerous occasions.
Yep.
Okay. So anyway, those are a couple comments that you prompted just from my experience of doing this. There was now a question. Please. I did a presentation outside my club, and I tried to go in and put in for external training.
Yes.
And I had done that a couple years ago, and I did it. And then when I tried to do it more recently, I could not find that.
Would you like me to tell you how to do that?
Please. How do you find the thing to apply for external training credit?
Okay, very good. Excellent question. This needs to be, I think, more explicit for folks. I'm glad you're asking this question, and it's going to be on the recording. As a member, you want to go into Paths in Learning.
Okay.
And within Paths in Learning, there are 3 dots sort of getting close to the upper right. And one of the options that comes about from those 3 dots is, I believe it's called Add External Training.
Okay.
And then you would go through all of the procedures of the title and information that they ask you about. I'm almost positive it's from Paths in Learning.
Okay. Yeah, I know how to do all of that stuff that you just
Once you're
mentioned.
there, yes.
I couldn't find the screen. And now,
Yes.
when you say there are 3 dots, are you talking about an ellipse, or are you talking about
Yes, an
circle at the
ellipse.
top?
Yes, yes. Thank
Okay.
you. Yes,
All right. Good. Thank you.
absolutely. Great question, PJ.
Anyone else have questions?
Actually, I do,
Yes, go ahead.
even though I'm the Zoom master.
Oh,
Absolutely.
yeah.
One of the things that I saw earlier on in your presentation is you were showing the example of having attended the makeup training of the secretary.
Yes.
Is that something that is done at the district level? As for example, I completed the president makeup training yesterday. Is
I
that
see.
something that is done at the district level, or is that something that we do at the club level?
Okay, great question. I'm going to jump in on that. I apparently was not clear, so I'm very glad you asked that in case other people have questions. I actually gave the secretary training. So I was the presenter for that. That was not reflecting my attendance to any training. So that would not be reflected at all in base camp. PJ can probably speak specifically about how they record that. But what you saw in my example was the fact that I gave the presentation, not that I attended as a participant. Does that make sense, or is that clear? Do you want to ask any? Okay.
Yeah,
Because that particular factoid was not mentioned.
yeah, and
Yes.
Dave applied for an external training credit for doing that presentation.
Yeah.
Because, and the reason it's external is because it didn't happen within the club setting where his VP education could witness it.
Yes.
So he had to give them information about when and where and what he was going to do. And then and they have to approve that.
Yes.
You're supposed to do this in advance. You say, I'm going to do this. Will you give me credit for this? Yes, I approve that. Then once you complete it, you mark it as complete, then they approve it after the fact.
Yep, exactly. Great question, great commentary.
Yeah.
Thank you for asking that.
And as far as the other half of that, Carol, you said you attended the club president training. Is that what you, and okay.
Yeah.
So you registered and signed in. And so whoever conducted that training is supposed to forward that roster of names to, let's say it'd be Lori Anderson, the program quality director. And then she has to log in to Leadership Central as a district officer and enter that you attended that training for your club to get credit.
Well, that's what I figured would usually happen.
Yep.
It was just when I saw what you had in your presentation, Dave, that I'm going, is this something that I missed?
Right.
Is there something that I should have done?
No.
Yep.
Yes.
Great question.
Mistakes are often and sometimes can be made. So I encourage you, Carol, and everybody else to look at the dashboard for your club DCP status and make sure that the correct number of your club officers are shown as trained. And it will actually say, you know, how many out of your 7. And you have to have a minimum of 4 in order to meet the DCP goal, as you probably know. And if the number of your club officers who attended training doesn't agree with that, then you need to find out why. Unfortunately, it doesn't tell you which club officers were trained. It just gives you a number. But Lori can log in and look and see which ones have been given credit. So then you all work that out, you know, you sort that out, and she can update the records to make sure everybody gets credit.
Excellent.
Okay.
And oh, by the way, there are ways in Zoom. When I was the program quality director, I had people say, hey, why didn't I get credit for attending this training? And I would go back and look at the logs that are generated by the Zoom meeting. And I'd say, well, the training started at 9 o'clock. Yep. You logged in at 9:05, you were late, and you dropped off at 9:08. You do not get credit for attending the training. And they go, oh, okay. And then they say, well, I logged in. Yes, but you were there late and for 3 minutes. So I chose not to give you credit. And that's happened on several occasions. And I've never had the people argue with me. Yeah. I think they knew it was a lost cause at that point.
And I do, whenever the questions are finished, which I'm not rushing or anything like that, I think we are about 1 minute out. I do have a closing comment or two
Okay.
whenever that happens.
All right. Yeah, I'm done talking. Anybody have any more questions?
I don't know.
Yeah, with this small group, we can be pretty informal, but okay,
Well,
Dave.
I got Dave's contact information, so.
Yeah, you know where to find him. Okay,
Yes.
I
Dave,
know
why
how
don't
to get
you
'em.
wrap it up for us?
Okay, yeah, great. I just wanted to say, thank you so much for attending. PJ knows that this is a labor of love. I mean, literally, I've been up all night, several nights in a row, because I think this subject is so important. As a Division H Pathways proponent last year, I had a chance to see a lot of excellent growth, excellent members, and I also saw some issues where the Vice President Education was struggling with these very issues. The ones that I put in the presentation were not just like, hey, I know, I'll try that. But this was based upon folks that had some real issues that we needed to either alleviate or ameliorate, make them feel better or provide some solutions. So I really appreciate you being here. If some of the material was review or you have folks that you talk with that might be struggling, I'm super glad that I was the elective because this had a chance to be recorded. And I strongly encourage anybody to share this information, ask me questions. Matter of fact, could anybody put my email address in the chat? I would appreciate that if somebody would, if anybody has questions. And I really want to offer also a hand to my fabulous team today. Carol has been doing a lot of emailing with me ahead of time to make sure all the details were perfect. Ellen Eno is another one coordinating this. She's been helping. PJ is a continual supporter. He's our immediate past district director. We have a cast of thousands, and you guys, phenomenal participants. Could we offer one more hand for everybody mentioned?
Yeah. Okay. And I just put your email address in the chat in case anybody needs it.
Thank
I do
you.
have
And I
one
think,
more thing that I want to mention as far as this presentation is concerned. One of the things that's also been a problem, I know was a problem when I was a VPE and Pathways was just starting, was when you had finally completed the whole Pathways, you have to remember to click that that final button 3 separate times.
yeah, I promise that's on my video, by the way.
Twice,
yes.
but then they wouldn't do it the third time.
Now,
And
are you
James
talking about a
finally put together a YouTube video for that, it being the Pathways Guide.
And are you talking about a project or I think you're talking about a project.
I'm talking about completing a pathway.
Oh, the actual full path.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
If
All right.
you're
There's
doing it for each level, you only have to do it once.
Okay. All right.
So
Yeah,
when
there's
you get
another
to the
issue
final,
that comes up. But yeah.
you basically have to close off the level, then you have to close off the pathway, and then you have to send a message off to the VPE.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Yep. So good. Well, I'm glad you got that figured out. And that is, there are a few quirks that I think we just have to kind of be aware of that we're all trying to work through, I think.
Yep.
I know somebody told me in the last couple of days that apparently that disconnect between Club Central and Pathways, somebody at Toastmasters is actually working on getting that resolved.
Right. Yep. They've been on that for a while, and
Yep.
it's coming along. In the meantime, I'm just always encouraging people to process their awards in both Base Camp as well as in Club Central.
Yeah.
Actually, I spent, I think it was like almost 2 hours on a Zoom call with somebody that like had the whole year. They didn't put any awards in Club Central. All of a sudden they went from like 0 to, like enough for President's Distinguished, They didn't meet the membership requirement, unfortunately, but it was, it's great to see the awards coming through and people can get credit within, Club Central as well.
Yeah, something that many people don't understand is that Pathways is hosted on a completely separate company than Toastmasters. It's not
Cornerstone
a Toastmasters
on
website.
Demand.
It's Cornerstone on Demand, which is quite a popular worldwide online learning system.
Yes.
The company hosts for major universities and all kinds of companies.
Yes.
So that's why they're not fully integrated, because
Right.
Toastmasters International is TI, and
Yes.
Cornerstone On Demand is Cornerstone On Demand. But they are talking about trying to, they can do some programming. They can make them talk to each other. It's just how cumbersome is it to do that?
Yeah.
And somebody's got to figure that out.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Because that whole connection has to be created.
Yep.
Yep. Excellent. Well, very good. I think this might be a good time to close it.